I was late for the evacuation drill when the sirens started wailing across downtown Indianapolis. My producer Marcus had been drilling me all morning about the sustainability segment, and now I was sprinting in heels toward the community center. "This way, miss." A volunteer with a clipboard pointed toward the basement shelter. That's where I first saw her. Amelia King sat in the corner, sketching something in a worn notebook while chaos swirled around us. Her brunette hair caught the fluorescent light, and those brown eyes held a focus that made everything else fade. "Mind if I sit?" I asked, though every other spot was taken. She looked up, pencil pausing mid-stroke. "Jade Russell, Channel 8 morning show. You watch?" I settled beside her, suddenly self-conscious. "Sometimes. Your architecture features are decent. Damn. Direct. I liked that." "What are you drawing?" "Emergency exit improvements. This building's design is terrible for evacuations." Her passion was immediate, hands moving as she explained sightlines and flow patterns. I found myself leaning closer, watching her fingers trace structural problems I'd never noticed. "You're an architect." "Guilty." Amelia King. She smiled, first real warmth I'd seen. "Though right now I'm just another person waiting for the all clear." The drill stretched on. We talked about everything. Her sustainable housing projects, my frustrations with fluff journalism, the way Indianapolis was changing. She was thoughtful where I was impulsive, grounded where I floated. "I should interview you," I said, as the sirens finally stopped. "Your work sounds fascinating." "I'm not great on camera. Trust me, you'd be perfect." We exchanged numbers, fingers brushing as she handed back my phone. The contact felt electric, lasting longer than necessary. "Thanks for making this bearable," she said, gathering her things. "Maybe we could grab coffee to discuss the interview." Her pause lasted forever. "I'd like that." Walking out into autumn sunlight, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just shifted. The drill was over, but something much more important was just beginning. 3 days later, I sat across from Amelia at the coffee shop downtown, pretending this was just business. She'd worn a navy blazer that made her eyes look deeper, and I kept losing track of my interview questions. "So sustainable architecture," I started, fumbling with my notes. "Tell our viewers why it matters." "Buildings consume 40% of energy. We're designing tomorrow's disasters today." Her voice gained confidence as she spoke. "Every structure should give back more than it takes." I found myself genuinely fascinated, not just performing for cameras that weren't even rolling. "Want to see what I mean?" she asked. "I've got a project finishing up nearby." The residential complex was stunning. Clean lines, solar integration, natural light flooding every corner. Amelia moved through the space like she owned it, explaining heat recovery systems and passive cooling with infectious enthusiasm. "This is incredible," I breathed, running my hand along a reclaimed wood beam. "Most people think sustainable means ugly compromise. But look," she stepped closer, pointing out window placement. "Beauty and responsibility can coexist." I turned toward her voice, and suddenly we were inches apart. The afternoon light caught those brown eyes, and something shifted between us. Professional distance evaporated. "Amelia," I whispered. She leaned in, lips brushing mine, soft and tentative. The kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it rewrote everything I thought I knew about myself. We pulled apart, both breathing hard. "I should go," she said quickly. "Wait, This was a mistake. But her eyes said the opposite as she grabbed her jacket and practically ran. That night, I called her anyway. "Can we talk?" "About what happened?" "Jade, I don't know what that was. Maybe we could figure it out over dinner?" Long pause. "As friends?" Sure. Friends." 2 hours later, we sat in a quiet restaurant, the word friends hanging between us like a lie. Every accidental touch sent electricity through me. Every smile made my heart race. "I've never," she started, then stopped. "Never what?" "Felt like this. About a woman." I reached across the table, covered her hand with mine. "Neither have I." The next morning, I sat in Marcus's cluttered office, staring at coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He kept glancing at me between phone calls, clearly sensing something was off. "Spill it, Russell. You look like you've seen a ghost." "It's complicated." "Try me." "I've seen complicated." I took a breath. "I think I'm falling for someone I shouldn't be." Marcus leaned back, studying my face. "Married? Taken?" "Female." He blinked once, then shrugged. "So? This is 2023, not 1953. My career, Marcus. The morning show demographic, conservative advertisers. Your personal life is personal, but if you're asking my opinion, authenticity always wins long term." That night, Amelia called. Her voice sounded strained, distant. "I've been thinking about us, about what this means." "And?" "I dated men for years, Jade, had relationships. I thought I was straight until what? Until you." The admission hung between us through the phone line. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too, but maybe scared isn't always bad." We talked until 3 a.m, about expectations, about fear, about the way her laugh made my chest tight. By the end, we'd agreed to see each other again. The next evening, storm clouds gathered as I picked her up for dinner. Rain started during appetizers, turning into a downpour by dessert. "My car's closer," she offered as we ran from the restaurant. We sat in her Honda, water drumming the roof, both soaked and laughing. The windows fogged up quickly, creating our own private world. "Jade," she said softly. I turned toward her, and this time there was no hesitation. She kissed me with purpose, hands tangling in my damp hair. This wasn't the tentative brush from the construction site. This was hunger, months of tension finally breaking free. When we separated, reality crashed back. "Damn it," she breathed, pressing her forehead against the steering wheel. "What's wrong?" "Everything. This changes everything." "Maybe that's not terrible. You don't understand. My career, my family expectations. I can't just flip a switch and become someone else." "I'm not asking you to become someone else. I'm asking you to be yourself." She started the engine without another word, drove me home in silence. At my door, she finally looked at me. "I need time to think." "How much time?" "I don't know." A week passed without contact. 7 days of me checking my phone every 5 minutes, drafting texts I never sent, and generally acting like a lovesick teenager. The morning show suffered. I stumbled through segments, forgot interview questions, and Marcus finally cornered me after a particularly disastrous weather segment. "This pining thing isn't working for you," he said bluntly. "I'm not pining. You asked our meteorologist about sustainable building materials during the 5-day forecast." Meanwhile, Amelia was apparently falling apart too. I knew this because Sophie, her best friend and fellow architect, showed up at the studio unannounced. "You need to call her," Sophie said without preamble. "She asked for space. She's miserable. Hasn't eaten properly in days, keeps staring at blueprints without seeing them. Whatever happened between you two, fix it." That afternoon, I made a decision. Instead of calling Amelia, I called Dr. Sarah Chen, Indianapolis's leading expert on sustainable urban development. I booked her for a full week of morning show segments about green architecture. Featuring local architects doing innovative work, I told Marcus. "Since when do you care about building materials?" "Since always." The segments aired beautifully. I interviewed 3 different architects, toured 2 sustainable buildings, and spent an entire morning discussing solar integration in residential design. By Thursday, my phone was buzzing with architecture firms wanting coverage. Friday evening, Amelia finally called. "I saw the shows. Just doing my job." "Bullshit. You hate architecture segments. You told me they were boring." Maybe I was wrong. Silence stretched between us. "Can I come over?" she asked quietly. 20 minutes later, she stood at my door looking exhausted but determined. "I can't stop thinking about you," she said without preamble. "Good. That makes 2 of us. This is crazy. I don't know what I'm doing." Neither do I. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, see the uncertainty in her brown eyes. I've never wanted anyone the way I want you. This time, I kissed her first. Soft, then deeper as she responded, her hands finding my waist, pulling me closer. We moved toward the couch without breaking apart, months of tension finally finding release. Her touch was gentle but sure, exploring with architect's precision. When she whispered my name against my throat, everything else disappeared. There was only her skin against mine, the way she moved, the small sounds she made when I found sensitive spots. We discovered each other slowly, carefully, like we were mapping new territory that might disappear if we moved too fast. Afterward, we lay tangled together, her head on my chest, both of us quiet and stunned. "So," I said finally. "So, any regrets?" She lifted her head, met my eyes. Only that we waited so long. 3 weeks into whatever we were calling this relationship, Amelia burst through my apartment door waving an official-looking envelope. "I got it," she said, breathless with excitement. "Got what?" "MIT, the Graduate Architecture Program. Full scholarship, Jade. Everything I've worked for." I should have been thrilled for her. Instead, my stomach dropped. "That's amazing," I managed, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. She was already pacing, talking rapidly about sustainable urban planning and her thesis proposal. I watched her light up with passion, memorizing every detail of her joy because something told me everything was about to change. "There's just one small complication," she said, finally slowing down. "What kind of complication?" She pulled out a second letter, this one from the housing department. "International student housing requires married status for the program I'm in. Visa complications," they said. "So you'll find off-campus housing. I can't afford Boston rent without the housing allowance. It's part of the scholarship package." The words hung between us like a death sentence. 2 days later, Amelia met with David Chen, the scholarship coordinator. I waited in her car, watching through the office window as they talked. When she came out, her face was unreadable. "Well?" He suggested a solution. Her voice was flat. "Arranged marriage with a male international student who needs green card assistance. Mutual benefit. Paper only." "You're joking." "His name is Wei. Computer science PhD. David says these arrangements happen more often than people think." I gripped the steering wheel harder. "And you're considering this?" "It's my career, Jade. Everything I've worked toward." "What about us?" "What about us? We've been together 3 weeks. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." The fight that followed was brutal. Voices raised, accusations flying, both of us saying things we couldn't take back. "You're asking me to choose between my dreams and whatever this is," she shouted. "I'm asking you to choose authenticity over convenience." "Easy for you to say. Your career isn't on the line. Neither is yours. You're just scared to fight for what you really want." She stared at me for a long moment, then gathered her things. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am scared. But at least I'm not delusional about what we can realistically have." The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with the echo of everything falling apart. That night, I called Marcus. "She's making a mistake," I said without preamble. "Maybe. Or maybe she's being practical." "Since when do you advocate for practical?" "Since I watched you fall apart over someone who's apparently willing to marry a stranger rather than figure out how to be with you." His words stung, because they were true. Amelia was choosing the safe path, the one that didn't require her to examine who she really was or what she really wanted. But maybe I was being naive, thinking 3 weeks of whatever we had could compete with a lifetime dream. 2 weeks without Amelia felt like operating with half my oxygen supply. I threw myself into work with manic determination, booking extra interviews, staying late to review footage, anything to avoid the quiet moments when her absence hit hardest. Marcus watched me with growing concern as I stumbled through my 3rd cup of coffee before the morning show. "You look like hell, Russell. Thanks for the pep talk. When's the last time you slept?" I couldn't remember. Every night was the same routine, lying awake replaying our fight, wondering if she'd already met with Wei, imagining her packing for Boston. Meanwhile, Amelia was apparently going through the motions of her fake marriage plan. Sophie called me during lunch, voice tight with frustration. She's meeting him today, the computer science guy. And she's miserable, Jade. Keeps talking about architectural integrity while planning to build her future on a lie. Maybe that's what she wants. Bullshit. You should see her. She's like a ghost. That afternoon, Marcus cornered me in the editing bay. Enough. This martyrdom act isn't helping anyone. I'm not being a martyr. You're letting the woman you love make the biggest mistake of her life because you're too proud to fight for her. She made her choice. She made a scared choice. There's a difference. He leaned against the desk, studying my face. You know what your problem is? You think love should be easy, that if it's real, it shouldn't require work. This isn't about work, Marcus. It's about her choosing safety over truth. So show her another option. Research alternatives. Find loopholes. Be the journalist you claim to be. That evening, I did something I should have done weeks ago. I called my college roommate Sarah, now an immigration lawyer in Boston. Jade Russell. Haven't heard from you in years. I need help with a visa situation. Personal or professional? Both. I explained Amelia's scholarship predicament, the housing requirements, the arranged marriage solution. Sarah listened quietly, occasionally asking clarifying questions. There are other options, she said finally. Several programs offer housing assistance for domestic partnerships. MIT's got progressive policies if you know where to look. Domestic partnerships? Civil unions, registered partnerships. Depends on the state and program specifics. Want me to research her particular scholarship? Yes. Please. The next morning, armed with Sarah's research, I drove to Amelia's apartment. Her car was gone, but I waited. 3 hours later, she pulled up looking drained. What are you doing here? For us. She looked like she might cry. Jade, don't. I talked to an immigration lawyer. There are alternatives. I handed her the folder Sarah had overnighted. Amelia flipped through it slowly, her expression shifting from resignation to something like hope. Domestic partnership housing allowances, she read aloud. 3 different programs that would work with your scholarship. No fake marriages required. She looked up at me, brown eyes bright with unshed tears. Why didn't you lead with this 2 weeks ago? Because I was an idiot who thought you should choose me over everything else instead of finding a way to choose both. The smile that spread across her face was worth every sleepless night. The next morning, I showed up at Amelia's architecture firm with coffee and fresh copies of the domestic partnership paperwork. She was hunched over drafting tables, but her face lit up when she saw me. I called MIT last night, she said immediately. The housing coordinator confirmed everything. If we register as domestic partners, I qualify for the same benefits. So I canceled my meeting with Wei. Relief flooded through me like warm honey. Good. Because I have something else to tell you. I'd been rehearsing this speech all morning, but looking at her now, the prepared words disappeared. I love you, Amelia. Not just the idea of you. Not just the way you make me feel. I love your passion for sustainable design. The way you sketch when you think, how you get that little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating. She stood slowly, eyes locked on mine. I love you too, which terrifies me. Why? Because this means everything changes. No more hiding, no more pretending we're just friends when people ask. I stepped closer, reached for her hands. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. This kiss was different from our previous ones. No desperation, no fear of interruption, just certainty, commitment, the taste of a future we were finally brave enough to claim. Her hands found my waist, pulling me closer against the drafting table. I could feel her heartbeat through her shirt, matching the rapid rhythm of my own. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, her forehead rested against mine. "My apartment's 10 minutes away," she whispered. "What about work?" "They'll survive." The drive felt like the longest 10 minutes of my life. Every red light was torture. Every glance at her profile in the passenger seat sent heat pooling low in my stomach. Inside her apartment, we moved with new urgency. This wasn't the careful exploration of our first time. This was hunger finally unleashed. Months of wanting given permission to surface. She pressed me against the door, hands tangling in my hair as she kissed down my throat. I pulled her shirt over her head, marveling at the smoothness of her skin, the way she arched into my touch. We stumbled toward the bedroom, leaving a trail of clothes, lost in each other completely. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets, afternoon sunlight streaming through her windows. "We should tell people," I said quietly. "Sophie already knows. She figured it out weeks ago." "What about Marcus?" "Your call." "But Jade?" She propped herself up on one elbow, meeting my eyes. "I want this to be real, public, no more sneaking around." That weekend, we went to the downtown architecture exhibition together. Not as friends, not as professional contacts, but as a couple. I watched Amelia explain green building concepts to other attendees, pride swelling in my chest. "She's brilliant," a woman next to me commented. "Yeah, she is. I'm lucky." The woman glanced between us, recognition dawning. "You're Jade Russell, from Channel 8. "That's right." "And she's your girlfriend." The word felt natural, right? "Amelia's my girlfriend." Later, as we walked to the car, Amelia squeezed my hand. "How did that feel?" "Scary. Amazing. Right. Good. Because there's no going back now." I stopped walking, pulled her close right there on the sidewalk, and kissed her thoroughly. A few people stared, but I didn't care. I wouldn't want to go back anyway. The domestic partnership paperwork took 3 weeks to process, but it felt like 3 years. Amelia applied for the alternative MIT housing program, while I researched long-distance relationship strategies, trying not to think about the 2-year separation ahead. "What if I moved to Boston?" I suggested one evening over dinner. "Your career is here. The morning show, your connections. Careers can be rebuilt. This can't." She reached across the table, intertwined our fingers. "Let's see how the scholarship works out first." The call came on a Tuesday. Amelia answered while I was making coffee, and I knew from her voice something had changed. "They accepted the domestic partnership application," she said, hanging up. "But there's more." "More?" "They're offering a hybrid program. Most coursework online with quarterly residencies. I could stay in Indianapolis and still get the degree." I nearly dropped the coffee pot. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Apparently, sustainable urban planning works better when you're actually embedded in an urban environment." That afternoon, we celebrated at the same coffee shop where we'd had our first interview. Everything had come full circle, but we were completely different people now. "I have something to tell you," I said, pulling out an envelope I'd been carrying for days. "Please don't let it be bad news." The opposite. Channel 8 wants to create a new segment, Local Innovators Making Environmental Impact. They want me to host. That's amazing. It gets better. The first feature? A local architect revolutionizing sustainable residential design in Indianapolis. Amelia's smile could have powered the whole coffee shop. 6 months later, we stood together at the groundbreaking ceremony for her first major commissioned project. A 40-unit sustainable housing complex that would set new standards for green residential development. Channel 8 News, Jade Russell reporting from the future of sustainable living. I spoke into the camera, then turned to Amelia. "Tell us about this revolutionary design." She launched into explanation about passive solar heating and rainwater collection, her passion infectious even through the TV lens. I found myself falling in love all over again, watching her in her element. After the cameras stopped rolling, the construction crew packed up, and the other officials left, we stood, alone in the empty lot that would soon house 40 families. "Pretty incredible," I said, surveying the stakes and markers indicating where walls would rise. It's just the beginning. The late afternoon sun cast everything in golden light. Emilia looked beautiful and confident, exactly like the woman I'd fallen for in that emergency shelter almost a year ago. "I have something to ask you," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. "Jade? We've built something pretty amazing together. Not just this relationship, but a whole life. A real partnership." I pulled out the small velvet box I'd been carrying for weeks. "Emilia King, will you build the rest of our lives together? Officially?" Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes immediately filling with tears. "Are you proposing?" "I'm asking you to marry me, for real this time. No visa complications, no practical arrangements, just us." She kissed me instead of answering, right there in the dirt and construction dust, and I took that as a yes. 1 year later, I stood in Emilia's redesigned apartment, watching her adjust the lighting for our engagement party. The space had been transformed into something from an architectural magazine, all clean lines and sustainable materials, but it still felt like home. "The caterer just called," Sophie announced, bustling through the door with arms full of flowers. "Everything's on schedule." "And the cake?" Emilia asked, still fussing with the dimmer switches. "Perfect. 2-tier, locally sourced ingredients, just like you wanted." I smiled, watching my fiancé orchestrate details with the same precision she brought to building design. 6 months of planning had led to this moment, celebrating not just our engagement but everything we'd built together. The first guests arrived at 7. Marcus brought his wife, Sophie came with her new girlfriend, and half of Emilia's architecture firm showed up with their partners. The apartment filled with laughter and conversation, people genuinely happy for us. "Speech!" someone called out as the evening reached its peak. Emilia looked at me nervously. "You're better with words." "We'll do it together." We stood in the center of the room, surrounded by friends and colleagues who'd watched our relationship evolve from that first awkward coffee interview to this moment. "1.5 years ago, I began. I thought I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. Then this woman showed up at an evacuation drill," Emilia continued, sketching building improvements while everyone else panicked. "She taught me that the best structures are built on solid foundations. And she taught me that taking risks doesn't always mean everything falls down." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Later, as guests began to leave, Emilia and I stood on her balcony, overlooking the Indianapolis skyline. "Look," she pointed toward downtown, where construction cranes dotted the horizon. 3 of those projects are using sustainable design principles we developed. Our work's having real impact. "Our work," she repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." The Channel 8 environmental segment had become the station's most popular feature, winning 2 regional journalism awards. Emilia's architecture firm had landed contracts across the Midwest, with sustainable housing projects in 4 different cities. "I have something for you," she said, pulling a small wrapped package from her jacket. Inside was a key, old brass with an intricate design. "It's from the first building I ever helped design. They demolished it last month, but I saved this." "Why?" "Because you don't just unlock doors, Jade. You unlock possibilities I never knew existed." I kissed her there on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below us like promises of the future we were building together. "So, what's next?" I asked. "Well, there's a wedding to plan. And I've got preliminary sketches for our house." Our house, completely sustainable. Solar panels, geothermal heating, rainwater collection, everything we've learned, built into the place where we'll spend our lives. Sounds perfect. It will be, because we're building it together. As we headed back inside to clean up from the party, I realized this was what happiness looked like. Not the dramatic passion of our early days, but something deeper. Partnership, commitment, the quiet satisfaction of building something lasting with someone who understood that the best foundations are laid with patience, care, and absolute trust. The emergency drill that brought us together felt like a lifetime ago. Now we were the ones creating shelter for others, in more ways than one.